There was a summer when I was 9 years old that lasted 6 weeks without a break. The kind of heat that presses down on a farm and does not lift. Not even at night, when the air turns still and close and the animals stand in the shade and do not bother to swat the flies. My father was out in it from first light, and I was out with him, and by afternoon I had stopped thinking about anything except getting through the next hour. The fields smelled of dust and baked straw. The pump handle was hot to the touch. Even the dog had given up on the shade and just lay flat in the dirt with his chin down. If this is useful to you, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from today. Then we finished and walked inside my grandfather's old stone house for supper. The cool of it hit me in the doorway like stepping into a spring house. I stopped right there on the threshold. The room was dim and still, and a good 15 degrees cooler than the world we had just left, and it smelled of stone and old wood and something faintly damp and clean, the smell a house gets when it has been sealed and left to breathe on its own terms. I could not explain it because the day had been punishing for everybody we knew, but not in that house. My grandfather owned no cooling machine of any kind, no fan, nothing electric to push cold air around, nothing you could plug into a wall. What he had was habit, and an old man's plain knowing of how heat moves, and a few things he did at certain times of day. That house was livable through the worst summer I can remember, while the rest of the county was suffering, and it cost him nothing. I am Amos Stoltzfus. I have thought about that house and what my grandfather did for a good many years since. Today I want to give you what he gave me, because it works, it costs near nothing, and the people who could profit from you not knowing it have done a thorough job of letting it be forgotten. One word first, and I will say it only once. I have gathered these old ways into a book at eliasyoder.com. If you want it, it is there. Now, the first thing you have to understand about keeping a room cool in summer, the thing that changes everything once you see it clearly, is that there are two separate battles going on at all times. There is the battle to keep the heat from coming in, and there is the battle to push back out the heat that has already got in. Most folks are fighting only the second one. They sit in a hot room in the afternoon and try to cool it down, open a window, wave a magazine at themselves, and wonder why nothing helps. Nothing helps because they gave up the first battle without knowing it existed. The old farmhouses were built to win both, and the old people managed those houses with the same care they gave a root cellar or a smokehouse, working with the way heat moves rather than against it. Heat rises. It soaks into stone and brick through the day and seeps back out again at night, and it pours through glass at a rate that will outrun anything else you do. Understand those three things and the rest follows. My grandfather's house had stone walls 2 feet thick. That is not an accident of building, and it is not just about strength. Stone is slow. It takes heat in, but it takes it in slowly, and by the time noon's heat has worked its way through 2 feet of stone, the day is nearly done and the outside air is already beginning to cool. A thin wood frame wall heats through in a couple of hours. Stone takes all day, and that delay is everything to the people living inside. The old builders in Lancaster County knew exactly what they were doing. Most of us do not have stone walls 2 feet thick, but the principle does not require them. Any heavy, dense material in a house does the same slow work on a smaller scale. Clay tile floors, brick interior walls, a heavy stone hearth, even a thick plank floor holds cool better than thin carpet over a hollow subfloor. The mass is the thing. Mass soaks up overnight cool and releases it slowly through the day, the same way a stone set near the fire stays warm long after the fire goes out. When you walk into a room with a tile floor on a hot afternoon and the floor feels cool under your feet, that is mass doing its work. A room full of heavy old furniture and plaster walls holds cool longer than a room with thin drywall and light pine floors. You cannot change the bones of your house overnight, but you can understand what you have and work with it. The first plain method costs nothing and is the most powerful one I know. You open every window in the house at night when the air cools, wide open, and you let the cool night air flush through every room for as many hours as you can give it. Then, in the morning, before the day heats up, before the sun gets high, you close them all again. All of them. You pull the shades down on the south and west windows before the sun reaches the glass, and you leave the house sealed through the hot part of the day. What you are doing is charging the house with cool air the way you charge a jug at the well, and then sealing it in before the heat of the day can replace it. My grandfather did this every summer morning of his life. He called it shutting the house, and he did it the same time each morning the way another man might milk a cow at the same time, regular and without fail. The house he sealed at 7 in the morning was still cool at 2 in the afternoon when the sun was at its worst. A sealed house holds cool the way a good crock holds brine. Seal the crock and the brine keeps. Leave the lid off and it goes off in a day. Your house is the crock. Now, the one question people ask is what to do on a morning that starts cloudy or overcast. My answer is to leave the windows open a little longer and watch the sky. A cloudy morning is cooler outside, which means you can flush the house longer, and you want that. But the moment you feel the temperature outside start climbing, or the sun breaks through and starts warming the south wall, you shut and shut fast. You cannot get those cool stored hours back once the hot air is inside. On a clear day in July, shut by 7. On a cloudy morning, you may have until 8 or 9. But do not push it, and do not get lazy, because one morning you left the windows open until 10 and it seemed fine. It will not seem fine on the next day when the sun comes out hard. The hard part of this method is not the doing of it. It is the habit. The battle is won or lost in the early morning, and there is no recovering it afterward. The second method is about how you open the windows at night, because the direction matters as much as the timing. My grandfather came into my room one hot night when I was 12 and found me lying awake with a window open and no air moving at all. He said I was doing it wrong. He opened my window at the bottom about 4 inches. Then he crossed the room to the window on the opposite wall and opened that one at the top. Not the bottom, the top. Within 10 minutes the room had a current moving through it, where before it had been dead still. Hot air is lighter than cool air. It rises and pools at the top of a room. When you open a window at the top of the far wall, that trapped hot air finds a way out. The cool air coming in low on the other side rushes in behind it to fill the space, and the room breathes. Open both windows at the bottom, and you have air coming in on one side and air leaving at the same height on the other, and the hot air pooled at the ceiling never moves. Open the incoming side low and the outgoing side high, and you have a current. My grandfather called it chimney draught, because a chimney works the same way. Fire heats the air, hot air rises and goes up the flue, fresh air pulls in from below. You do not need a fire. The summer heat in the room itself does the same work. If you want to know whether the draft is actually moving, hold a thin strip of paper or a piece of thread up near the top of the high window after you have set things up. If the thread pulls toward the glass and lifts, the air is moving out as it should. If it hangs limp, something is blocking the flow, another window or door closed somewhere in the path, and you need to find the blockage and open it. A room with one window open is a room in a bottle. 2 windows open correctly is a room that breathes. The third method costs you about $2, and it is the one that will seem strangest if you have not seen it done. You take a piece of plain cotton cloth, an old sheet works well, and you wet it through and wring it most of the way out, not dripping but well damp, and you hang it in the window where the air comes in. The air passes through the wet cloth and comes out cooler on the other side. Water evaporating into air pulls heat out of the air to do it, the same reason you feel cold stepping out of a pond on a windy day. The wind evaporates the water on your skin and takes the heat right off you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what we share next. My grandmother hung wet sheets in the windows every hot afternoon of her life in summer. She said her own mother called it the Egyptian curtain because she had heard that people in dry, hot countries had done it for centuries before anyone in Lancaster County ever thought of it. Whether the name is right, I cannot say, but the principle is as old as heat itself. Wring the cloth well before hanging. A dripping sheet makes puddles and rots your window frame in time. Damp, not wet. A loosely woven cloth works better than a tight one, because air moves through it more freely and picks up more moisture in the passing. Re-wet it when it dries out, which in good airflow might be every hour or two. In a dry climate, this works very well. In a very humid one, where the air is already heavy with moisture, the evaporation slows and the cooling is less. Know your climate and use it accordingly. Dry heat is what this was made for, and in dry heat it is as close to free air conditioning as anything that exists. The fourth thing is the one that matters more than nearly all the rest combined, and it is blocking the sun before it reaches the glass. A window in direct afternoon sun pours heat into a room at a rate that will defeat anything else you try. The glass lets sunlight straight through, and the room heats up like a closed car in a parking lot, and there is nothing to be done about it once the sun is already on the glass. But shade that window before the sun reaches it, and the heat never enters in the first place. My grandfather's house had a roof that overhung the walls by 2 feet, which kept the high summer sun off the windows entirely. Shutters on the outside of the windows, not the inside, that could be closed in the afternoon. And 3 old maple trees on the west side of the house he had not planted himself, but had reason to be grateful for every August he lived. Most of us cannot grow a maple tree in time for this summer. But you can make a shade, a piece of canvas tarp or burlap, or an old sheet stretched out from above the window on a couple of sticks, or tied to the overhang of a porch roof, will shade that window from the afternoon sun for the cost of a few dollars. Use a pale cloth if you have the choice. A white or light-colored outer shade reflects more of the sun's heat back away from the house, where a dark cloth absorbs it and can radiate some of it back into the wall. My grandmother's exterior shutters were always painted white on the outside, and she would have found it puzzling to paint the sun-facing side any darker. Light out, heat out. An outer shade stops the sun before it enters the glass. Closing the blinds inside traps the heat that has already come through and holds it in the room with you. The difference between those 2 things is enormous. An outer shade on a west window on an August afternoon may make the difference between a room you can work in and one you cannot. This was a standard feature of every house in hot country before air conditioning arrived and made it seem unnecessary. Deep eaves, exterior shutters, awnings, canopies, the shade hung outside the glass. They are not old-fashioned, they are the right answer. The 5th method is something you do for yourself rather than for the room, and it is so old and simple that I almost left it out. I would have been wrong to. Your wrists have veins close to the surface. So does your neck and the backs of your knees. Run cold water over your wrists for 30 seconds at the sink, or press a cold, damp cloth to the back of your neck, and your whole body cools in a way that no room temperature can match that fast. The old remedy for someone in heat distress was always the wet cloth to the neck and wrists first, before anything else, because it works. It works fast and it costs nothing. Farmers who worked fields in summer heat knew this the way they knew the names of their tools. They did not stop when it was hot. They managed their bodies in the heat with attention and a little prevention against the worst of it. A damp bandana around the neck on a still August afternoon does more for your comfort than you would believe, until you try it. The 6th method is keeping the heat from being made inside the house in the first place. Every stove you run, every oven you light, every lamp burning throws heat into the room it is in. My grandmother cooked in the summer kitchen, a small separate building off the back of the house, and the main house stayed cooler for it. She did not do it for the novelty of it. She did it because a woman who had lived through enough Augusts in a stone farmhouse without any cooling knew without anyone telling her that running a wood stove inside the house on a hot day was making her own life harder. It was the plain reasoning of a person who paid attention. Most of us do not have a summer kitchen. But cooking outside on a grill in the evening, or cooking only in the early morning and eating cold things through the midday heat makes a real difference to how hot a house gets. A gas stove running for an hour in a sealed house on a hot day adds more heat to the inside air than you would expect. An outdoor fire adds nothing to the house at all. The seventh thing is something that costs under $10 if you need to buy it, and you may already own it. A plain spray bottle filled with water. You mist yourself when you are hot, mist the back of your neck, mist your arms, mist your sheets before you lie down on them at night. The fine water on your skin evaporates and pulls heat away from your body, which is the same thing the wet sheet in the window does to the air, only now you are doing it directly to yourself. On still nights when no breeze is moving and the air hangs heavy and the window tricks cannot help you, a spray bottle of cold water will let you sleep when nothing else will. My youngest daughter started doing this last summer on the worst nights after I told her about it, and she sent me a message that said it was the best thing she had learned in years. She had been lying awake miserable for weeks before that. $1 spray bottle. That was the whole of it. One last plain thing, and I say it without apology. You will sleep cooler in a lower part of the house. The top floor of a house is always the hottest. Heat rises all day and collects at the ceiling and in the rooms above, and a second-floor bedroom in August can be 8 to 10 degrees hotter than the first floor directly below it. The first floor is cooler. The basement, if you have one, is cooler still. Many an old farmhouse family moved their sleeping to the cellar for the worst weeks of August, without any shame about it, and woke up rested where the people upstairs were soaked through. My grandfather spent 2 weeks of every August sleeping in his basement. He did not find it peculiar. He found it sensible. The earth around that cellar stayed at the same cool temperature summer and winter, and that cool bled through the walls and the floor, and a man who slept down there slept the way a man ought to sleep. A bed on a cool floor on a hot night is a plain gift that costs you nothing but the willingness to carry your pillow downstairs. Now let me say the word I always say at this point, and I will say it careful. There are people who make a good living selling you a window unit for $300, and then selling you the power to run it for $40 or $50 a month, summer after summer, for the life of the machine. Nobody makes a cent when you open your windows in the right direction, or shut your house at 7 in the morning before the heat comes in, or hang a damp cloth in the path of the breeze, or sleep in the coolest room in the house. There is no money in any of that, and so nobody is advertising it to you. Nobody put up a billboard for the morning shutdown. Nobody mailed you a flyer about the wet sheet in the window. The knowledge moved along person to person, the way all plain knowledge does, and when the people who lived that way moved into houses with central cooling and never needed those habits again, the habits thinned out. Each generation knew a little less of it than the one before. Nobody buried it. The prophet just ran entirely the other direction, and knowledge that nobody is paid to teach is knowledge that thins out on its own. I am not telling you that cooling machines are wicked, or that no one should own one. There are people in very hot climates, very humid places, elderly people who are genuinely at risk when the heat gets serious, and for them the machine may be the right thing. I would not argue with any of them. What I am saying is that a great many people running their units around the clock through August could be comfortable without them, spending hundreds of dollars a summer they do not need to spend, simply because nobody told them the old way was still there and still worked. And there is no reason that needs to go on. Here is what I would ask of you. This coming summer, try the morning shutdown. Open every window at night, close them all before the heat of the day. Shade the west and south windows from the outside before the sun reaches them. Hang a damp cloth in the incoming breeze. Sleep on the first floor or in the basement on the worst nights, and keep a spray bottle of cold water on the nightstand. See how far that carries you before you reach for the machine. Come down to the comments and tell me how it went. Tell me what state you are in, and what kind of house you live in, stone or frame or brick, and whether your summer is the dry kind of hot or the wet and heavy kind, because the wet cloth method works best in dry heat, and the morning shutdown matters everywhere but most in the dry. I read what you write, and I learn from you, and so do the people reading down the thread. If you have a method your own people used that I have not named here, I especially want to hear it, because there are 100 variations of this old knowing that I have never come across and probably never will, unless someone who holds them writes them down. Next time I want to go deeper into the hard water trouble, the white scale that furs the inside of your kettle, clogs the shower head so it sprays crooked, and leaves rings on everything it touches. There are old, cheap ways to clear it and manage it that every person with hard water ought to know, and the main ingredient is likely sitting in your kitchen right now. That is a good one, and I will see you for it. Open the house at night, seal it in the morning, shade the glass from outside with something pale, damp cloth in the path of the breeze, cool yourself at the wrists and neck, cook outside or early, find the lowest floor when the night is bad, keep a spray bottle on the nightstand. That is the whole of it, for $10 at the very outside, and most of it for nothing at all. The people who built this country with their hands knew that, and we are only just starting to remember it. Thank you for watching. More videos are on your screen now, and subscribing means you will not miss what comes next.